On the one hand, what fiat money, I think there are really three mechanisms that define fiat world in my mind. On the one hand, it allows government spending. It allows government to spend essentially unlimited until the currency collapses. So until the currency collapses, the government can just continue to spend, and they can just print money and spend and do whatever they want. So that allows them to influence the market enormously. That allows them to just decide what is an economist and what is not an economist. You can't just be an economist at a major university that doesn't believe in idiotic Keynesian theories. You have to, because if not, then you don't get funding, you don't get licensed, you don't get student loans for your university. So fiat money, instead of having a competition in who is the best teacher as based on the market, as based on who produces the best good that gets the most revenue from consumers, fiat money ends up making it so that whoever wins the competition, whoever's at the top, is the one that is able to secure money from government. So the consumer for everything is the government, because the government is the one that prints the money and pays for it. So that's the first mechanism. The second mechanism is that it destroys people's ability to save for their future, and therefore makes people less able to provide for themselves and less able to be financially independent. So they become more dependent on the fiat money printer. So eventually, even if you're rich on the fiat system, you can't just stay rich because your money is constantly losing value. So you need to go back to the fiat well, and you need to keep borrowing, and you need to keep continuing to, being credit worthy ideologically, basically, in order to stay in that system. And then the third thing is, by taking away people's ability to save for the future, you take away people's ability to think of the future much. People start discounting the future more. I think this is really important. I think the hardness of money is a very good control knob for our time preference. When we have a money that is hard, it's easy for us to save for the future. The future becomes less uncertain, slightly, and so we start factoring in the future more in our decisions. When our money is very inflationary, we have no easy mechanism for providing for our future, so the future becomes more uncertain, so we start discounting the future more. If you've ever been in a place that has had a hyperinflation, like in Lebanon, you see that people's decisions, people's long-term plans just go away, because you can't think about what am I going to be doing in 5 years' time. You have no idea what you're going to be doing in 5 years' time. So your job is focused on how do I survive until the end of the week or the end of the month. If you're lucky, it's the end of the year. So people's time horizon declines along with the destruction of money from something that is useful as a store of value to something that is just essentially a government loyalty points scheme. So you combine those three factors, and that's what really is what defines fiat world for me. On the one hand, it's all of these institutions that emerged in the 20th century through government financing at the expense of the free market choices. And I think it's a very, very deep rabbit hole, because there's a lot of things that were different in the 20th century from the 19th century. A lot of it is technological. We didn't have TVs and computers and cars and airplanes in the 20th century as widespread. They were invented in the 19th century, but they became widely used in the 20th century. So obviously, not everything in the 20th century is a result of fiat. A lot of it is technological, but I think a lot can be attributed to fiat, because a lot is clearly the product of a century of government subsidies. And so, my favorite example, the one that we discussed, is Keynesian economics. Why do we teach this ridiculous fiction in universities? Why does this insanely idiotic idea that there's a trade-off between inflation and unemployment, how does it survive? And how can a university continue to teach this when we've had hundreds of examples all throughout the last 50 years that definitively refute this? There is no relationship between unemployment and inflation in the short run. There is no Phillips curve. It's ridiculous. If you try and plot the Phillips curve for any country, you don't get a curve, you just get a blot. There's no real relationship going on there. So why does this continue to get taught? Fiat. It's imposed by fiat, and ultimately the word fiat just means imposition. And so what fiat money does is that it allows governments to impose all of these ridiculous ideas without them suffering from the competition of the market. If we had hard money, If we take away the fiat money, then yeah, sure, government could pass laws that say, your university should teach this and your university should teach that. But without the money to enforce those things, there'll still be people teaching other things. Without the ability to move enormous amounts of credit and to take away people's wealth and take away universities' endowments, destroy their values through inflation, without all of that, then you have the ability for a free market to emerge. The university that teaches people nonsense in the Keynesian tradition ends up graduating people that are unable to function in the real world, as opposed to people who know how the world actually works.